Hey, hello, and welcome to the Content Advantage, a talk show about content for content professionals, hopefully somebody just like you. I'm Scott Abel, your host for this episode, featuring our guest, Heather Hedden, author of The Accidental Taxonomist. Welcome to the show, Heather.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for having me here. I'm very glad to be here.
I'm glad to have you too. Can you hear it clearly? Is everything okay?
Yes, yes.
All right, awesome. Without further ado, then let me switch over to audience mode and tell them what to expect. So here's a few things about this webinar. First, we can't see or hear you because we don't have access to your camera or microphone, so you don't have to worry about that at all. Additionally, if you'd like to ask a question of Heather at any time during the show, you can click the Ask a Question button located underneath your webinar viewing panel to submit a text-based question to the queue. I will monitor the queue and ask Heather as many questions as possible during the time that we allow for Q&A in the show. All right, and we've got additional content that can be accessed at any time during the show, including troubleshooting information in case you're having any trouble with the BrightTalk platform we're using today to broadcast today's show. There's also contact information for our presenter and information about the topic that she's going to talk about. She'll refer to a few things that are attached in the attachment section as well. And you can access that content plus content from our sponsor by clicking the attachments tab, which is located underneath your webinar viewing panel. That'll open a little document repository where all this content can be found. You can access that at any time during the show. Additionally, we do have polling capability, but I'm not thinking we're going to use that today, so you don't really need to worry about that. And I'd like to ask you a favor at the end of the show, and I'll remind you that as the time nears, to give us a rating to provide some feedback on the quality of the information that Heather provided today during the show. All right, without further ado, we're going to jump right into this program here. So Heather, the first question I have for you is, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what do you do for a living? And also, how did you become interested in today's topic?
Okay, yeah. So I'm a taxonomist and I'm author of the book, The Accidental Taxonomist. So sometimes I say I'm an accidental taxonomist myself. I did not study library or information science or other related fields. I got into the field by doing indexing or tagging with taxonomies. And then it was with a company that was publishing magazine and other periodical indexes for libraries. That's how the kind of taxonomies got started with libraries. But then, they've gone everywhere and in all kinds of companies and organizations and enterprises. So, and I've had various different jobs, and in between jobs, I decided to write about what I've learned in different roles, because it's not just being a taxonomist in one organization, but in different ones, and doing consulting, I got different perspectives. So then I did write the book, and I've also done a lot of teaching as well. I'm currently a data and knowledge engineer, not so much data, more knowledge engineer with Semantic Web Company, a vendor of Pool Party software, which is one of the software products on the market for managing taxonomies and ontologies and knowledge graphs. And I'm in the consulting side, but I still do teaching and training some, on the side on my own as also. I'm sorry if there was another part of the question.
You covered it nicely. Here, let's just dive right into the topic then, because you used a
Oh
lot
yeah,
of
I didn't
the
explain the topic. Yeah, maybe I should add that I blog also. That was it. I
Hold
have an
on, I'm jumping back to you now.
Yeah, I forgot. The Accidental Taxonomist blog. And I've been blogging for, I think, 11 years now, usually every month. And I posted a blog several months ago on the subject of attributes. And that's what kind of spurred this particular topic.
Excellent. So tell our audience, what do we mean by the word taxonomy, and why do people watching this show who ostensibly are content professionals of some sort, why do they need to know that?
Okay. Yeah, taxonomies are, it's a controlled collection of controlled concepts or terms that are structured into hierarchy or other groupings. So it brings together different names or wordings for the same concept that different people might call something they're looking for, and then different text or other content might have different names. So you bring together the different names and you put it into a structure, and that supports retrieval when the content is tagged, whether manually or automated with the taxonomy terms. So I think I'll show an example of how it works, if
Sure.
that's okay. Let's see here. I'm going to share. Okay. Get to the right. Okay. All right, what I'm sharing here is the help for my employer's product, Pool Party, and this is publicly available. You can just go to helppoolparty.biz. This does not yet have a taxonomy integrated in it. We're working on that. So if somebody is interested in, let's say, exporting from the software, and they search this without a taxonomy, of course there's search on it, and we get some results here. Importing and exporting data inside graph editor, but like I didn't want it in graph editor. And then there's, actually, if I look here, there's so many results. How do I know which one do I want? So, maybe I would find what I want, but it's not precise enough. So we have developed, and you can see this is still dev. We're working on a taxonomy. This is internal still. And we have here, if I put now, this is I'm looking at the same thing. This is actually has a Pool Party help and some other stuff. But if I type in exporting here, first of all, it's matching against terms in the taxonomy. And it's not even matching against the terms, it's even matching against different synonyms. So exporting CSV and exporting Excel are actually the same, but in case people were thinking about it differently. And then I go there, and then, 9 results. That's not too many, and it's, telling me exactly the first one I want. And we also, another way, of course, it would be to browse here too. I'm under actions or features, if I want to do exporting, it's here, and then we have a hierarchy. So there are 2 different ways to go. But you can see how it's a better experience, more precise results when you have the taxonomy in it.
Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Are there different kinds of taxonomies, or is there only one kind? I'm always amazed at the expertise that you have. So what about taxonomies? Are there more than one kind?
Yeah, although they kind of merge together a little bit. I mean, already now I just, you saw very briefly this, supporting search or whatever. But I think that, and basically we'll talk about different kinds as being more hierarchical, more faceted. I'll explain what facets are. Also, a thesaurus is another kind of more formal type of taxonomy that not only has broader, narrower relationships, but also related or associative relationships. And having synonyms, which are called non-preferred terms or alternative labels, is a required feature of a thesaurus. In fact, there are even published standards and guidelines for best practices for thesauri, a little bit more loose about taxonomies. Now, taxonomies are sometimes defined more broadly. Broader than taxonomies are what we call controlled vocabularies of all kinds. They may have structure, they may not. So we can think of a term list that doesn't have structure, just a list, as being a controlled vocabulary. If it's been controlled, what's decided, what's going to be included, how, and you can't just use any keywords, and you can only use the terms in a controlled vocabulary. And that gets interesting because I'm going to talk about attributes, and attributes are managed as often lists of term lists of controlled vocabularies as such. So I guess I can still show some other examples too of hierarchical and faceted.
Yeah, let's do that. I think that's important.
So I'll share my screen again. Let's see. I'll start with faceted. So, okay. So facets has having these different attributes and different types. I'm going to show from somewhere we've probably all gone to, which is LinkedIn, looking for jobs. And I've already gone here, job search. If you notice, they call them filters. Now, the word filter, that that means facets or attributes, and I'll explain difference later. But right now we're talking about the overview. There's no hierarchy here, but you see a few of these different filters. If you click on all filters, actually, I think I already had it there, you can see what else beyond beyond these here. Okay, so experience level, and then these are controlled terms. I can't just make up anything. Companies too, that's a control list. Job type, on-site or remote, location, industry, job function. So let's see how this works. You notice the plus there. So I don't like those industries. I want another. Let's say I'm interested in computer software. Now notice the type ahead. Again, it's matching against terms in the control vocabulary in the taxonomy. And job function, I'll choose something here. Writing and editing. I just typed ahead, so we've selected. And now remember, there were 7 million results. Now we're down to 3,000. So I can choose my location. Now it really limits it down further. And of course, let's say hybrid or something. And now we're down to only 3 results. But that's how a faceted taxonomy works. Okay, so then a hierarchical taxonomy. Actually, I should back out. I already went here. Say, look at this is for often products are organized hierarchically. So if you go to eBay, before you search, notice there's shop by category. Category indicates hierarchies of categories and subcategories. Let's stop this. And you can see these top categories and the next level categories. So I'll go here, books, movies, and music. And then we see the next level, books and magazines, books and TV, music, musical instruments and gear. And then we can also choose them here, musical instruments and gear. And let's say I choose guitars and basses. And then I can get, further down through the hierarchy this way. Bass guitars, and then I'm kind of at the bottom of the hierarchy. So that's the difference between hierarchy and more hierarchical and more faceted types of taxonomies. Right. So, oh yeah, there, end share.
Excellent. All right. Well, then let's move on a little bit. I was going to say I'm kind of famous for saying a few snarky things at conferences, and one of them I remember saying a few years ago in a presentation I gave repeatedly was, no one wants to navigate your decision tree. No one wants to filter their results or jump through any features that your content team introduced to help people find information, because you're still making them do it. And people gravitate toward service, good experiences. I don't have to do that anymore. You're doing it for me. Thank you for delivering that information to me. So my question is, how can taxonomies help us deliver the right content to people? You showed us where we can present content and then give users the ability to go through and filter, but it assumes they want to do it, first of all, that they know how to do it, and that they understand how we organize things. And as you and I have talked about before, it's easy to go awry with taxonomy if you don't really understand the implications of your decision making. So how would what you've invested into the content that you've got at Pool Party enable you to, for example, provide that kind of personalized experience later?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because it doesn't have to be where the user initiates a search. You can set up alerts or feeds for one thing, and that's even with looking for jobs on LinkedIn. You can do that. But so then the users some of them user still has to fill out a form. But other kinds of personalization can be based on a user. Just some other information from a user profile. So there's personalization that then can match with taxonomy terms that then are tagged to content. Then there's also recommendation, which is almost kind of a step beyond or more specific type of personalization. And there are different methods of recommendation, and some methods are completely based on algorithms and don't necessarily involve taxonomy. But are also implementations of recommendation services or recommendation engines that do use taxonomy as well. And even at my company, at Semantic Web Company, we've built a demo recommendation. It's called the HR recommender. It's like recommending people to match up with others in their organization, or to projects, or to job openings. But it's based on a taxonomy and of skills, and that these skills appear in people's profiles, and the skills appear in the projects, and in the job openings, and they're related to each other. It's not just the same skills. There's actually a relationship of the skill is necessary for a job, or the skill is there's even two different levels, like necessary versus required,
nice to have.
versus optional for a job, because you talk about lots of them.
It's required you speak English. We all speak English, but it's nice to have that you understand how to program in XML or some other.
Yeah, well, especially with technical ones, that well, it'd be nice if you knew all these technical skills, but obviously, so we
can only hire one of you instead of four of you.
I mean, it to have these customized related relationships brings it to semantic relations. We kind of move over to what's called an ontology. And I don't know how far we want to talk about that. But what's interesting, and I will mention again, because sometimes you will think of an ontology as something very complex, and you don't need to build a big whole full ontology describing everything. Just what's the business need? We need this one customized relationship. We need a few attributes here. So it's a piece of a taxonomy.
Could you go ahead and tell us what ontology is as it relates to taxonomy, so that our audience members won't be confused?
Yeah, that's right. Because ontology comes out of the field of philosophy, and it's often taught in computer science, which is not my field at all. But if you start with a taxonomy and then you progress to thesaurus, and you have these related term relationships, such as a product, and then a function, what it's supposed to be used for, or the location of something. And so it's all related, and it's all generic related. But if you want to give some meaning, how is it related? That those semantic relationships is kind of in the direction towards an ontology. And it does depend on the tools. And Pool Party does this. Our competitors do this too, where there's also a feature to add an ontology, almost as a semantic layer. It's sort of called. It's not like it's a separate. It's not a whole separate taxonomy or knowledge organization system or control vocabulary. It just adds to it, and you can then add some of these customized relations and additional attributes. And that's why it actually ties in with these talks, because your basic taxonomy management tool might not give a place to add attributes to each taxonomy category or term, but an ontology is one way to do that. I have some screenshots, but I'll
do you want to share them?
Since you brought that up already, I was gonna go more towards the end, but I think I'll do that now.
Sure.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so this is from this is a taxonomy here. Maybe I'll come back to it again later as relevant, but the taxonomy, that SKOS stands for Simple Knowledge Organization System. It's a guideline or a recommendation from the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium for Control Vocabularies, Taxonomies, thesauri, to make them standard, machine readable, obviously readable on the web, and so forth. So it defines broader concepts, narrower concepts, related concepts, so even thesaurus-like, if there's a top concept, a concept scheme, and then labels, preferred label, alternative labels, which are synonyms, hidden labels, which are if you display your labels. Now, I was making heavy use of the hidden labels when I was building this taxonomy that included that type ahead in searching the online help, because I want to match some phrases that are in the text, but they were a little bit obscure or I didn't want them to show up necessarily in the type ahead. So that's SCOS, and that's what you get. But now over here, recipe scheme. So a scheme is actually the better word to say, kind of a subset of something that has ontology in it. So if I click on that tab, then we get these ontology based things, such as these other relations: for occasion, goes with, has main ingredient, prepared by, and then these other attributes that are not based on control vocabulary. So that's where we've converted something that was a simple taxonomy into more like an ontology by adding this recipe scheme. So I'll stop sharing.
Excellent. I think that dovetails nicely into a show we had about personalization, where we learned from the presenter about the 4 R's of personalization. And really, the 4 R's are the 3 things you must do that start with an R, and what you get if you do that. And that also starts with an R. So I thought it was interesting because your explanation actually maps really well to this. This presenter
Good.
said that in order to provide relevant information, which is the end goal, so that's the R at the end, you have to recognize things about the person. You have to remember those things. And then you have to use those remembrances to recommend relevant content.
Okay. I hadn't heard about that.
So if you were to say recognize, that's saying we know these things are different and they have unique characteristics. We want to give them individual names so we can differentiate right between them, and so we recognize them. Now we're going to put them into a system where we can remember them. That would be as tagging stuff, right, and associating the taxonomy, and then we want to use that to recommend the most relevant content for that particular person. And I think that's what you're teaching us, is that the power of the taxonomy allows us to be able to either present a filtering mechanism that you showed where somebody can self-serve, or we could say to a service provider, a chatbot or something, don't provide this information because what we remember about this person is that they speak English and they use this product. So telling them things in French about some other product might be the old school approach. Here's everything. You're the user, find what you want. But I think today we're trying to move past that, aren't we? We're trying to use this taxonomy and ontology to power solutions that make it possible for your customers at Pool Party, for example, to beat their competition. They want to be able to use their taxonomy and ontology as a weapon, right? Like kind of to be powerful, to develop business capabilities, what I meant, not human damaging capabilities.
Yeah. I think we like to talk about it, improving customer satisfaction, whether that's internal or external, knowledge discovery.
Yep.
And that kind of goes with the recommendation. You're kind of just discovering something you didn't even realize was there, and therefore we're not even searching for it. And I'm trying to think one other point, but anyway, so on the bigger picture, it's not just I need to look for some information.
Right.
Yeah.
I think if you're thinking about building a capability for your organization that's based on content, you're going to have to learn about taxonomies and ontologies in order to automate that, right? In order to use tools to your benefit. If we could just do it all by hand, it'd be great, but it would be slow and no one would be happy. So what do you think about these terms that you kind of promised in our description today that we would talk about? Facets and attributes.
Right.
Can you help us understand those?
Yeah. In fact, what's interesting is I didn't even think of much of this. So the story behind this is maybe a number of years back, I was contracting on a consulting project that was e-commerce. And I always thought of everything just as facets, and my partners who are also consultants, they know what they're talking about. We're talking about attributes, and I thought, well, this is confusing because I would think of attributes as I showed on the cake, like calories or something. There was others fixed metadata on taxonomy terms, but then eventually I came to realize there is a difference. And what's nice is that the end user doesn't know that there's a difference.
Right.
They don't know it's called a facet. They don't know it's called an attribute. They just know, oh, I can filter. I can limit my results.
Yeah, I can find my vacuum cleaner bags, right?
Yeah. But I'll show you some examples but it makes a difference in the design, in the back end, and the tool you use. So let me
Okay,
show you
let's show
those.
that. The audience is really engaged and they're
Okay.
asking lots of questions. So I'm trying to hurry you on, not
Okay.
to rush you,
Yeah, but
but
I
to
do
make
have
sure
to
that we
show the
cover
difference.
those basic topics before we
Yeah,
tackle the
yeah,
question.
I do
Okay.
have to show the difference between. So here's another site showing facets,
Oh, yes, I
research.
love this site.
Yeah, it's changed though in time.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean, if I so plus it's scientific research journals, but
Yeah.
it's free. It's freely available. And I haven't even put anything in the search box yet. Who knows what is there? But I already have options of filters here. And now, so filters here now are journal, subject area, article type, author. This is interesting. But so these aren't attributes, right? These you can't say that a journal is an attribute. So especially when we're dealing with documents and
Yeah.
articles and so forth, these are clearly facets, and I can limit by them. And what's interesting is once I limit one subject area, I can add another subject area, and I can take a journal, and I just keep narrowing down. Okay. Now when I'm going to go back now here to our eBay and our guitars. Remember, we narrowed down. We went through a hierarchy first, and then I got to the bottom of the hierarchy, and now I have shop by string configuration, shop by brand. Now these here we're coming to attributes because they're not part of the hierarchy tree, and there's some other things down here too. It's a little bit small, but string configuration, brand, country, region of manufacture, handedness. Let's see left hand. I don't know anything about left hand, right hand. body color, body color, condition, because we got new and used, and of course price, the ever popular price. So these are attributes. Now you see how the attributes kicked in after I went drilling down through the hierarchy, and they're very focused. I'm going to show another example of this with Etsy. Okay, so I'm here at the top here. I look for jewelry and accessories, and I can drill down further, different kinds of jewelry, but I do have filters too, and the filters are the attributes. What's interesting here is the filters are available even when I'm at the high level jewelry and accessories. If I click on that, you can see now these are over here on the left. Of course, price, color, location, handmade or vintage. That's of course characteristic of Etsy. But there's some here now. But if I went further and I went, I'm sorry if I mouse over, I get things. But no, let's say I want necklaces, and I can get very specific type of necklaces too. If I just click on necklaces. So wait a minute here. I thought it was, or maybe if I just go here, I'm at necklaces. Yeah, now I'm at necklaces, and I'm going to look at filters again. Again, the price, color, occasion, holiday. Now material is coming up, style, closure. This is very specific for necklaces because they need to close. Chain style, right? Necklaces have chains, and gemstones. So what you see here is that some attributes are a little more generic, and they go with they kind of match up higher in the categories. And when the categories in the hierarchical taxonomy get more specific, you can get more specific attributes. Gemstone, number of strands, okay, and they're kind of mixed up here. I think they're listed alphabetically or whatever. Theme. Anyway, the most detailed attributes I have seen around are with Etsy, which of course makes makes an interesting user experience. I guess the visitors of Etsy are very particular and really know what they want.
Are there best practices for how to organize the presentation of this information? It seems like tagging them and having the structure and managing that's one thing, and then presenting it in a way that's useful to the user. For example, I'm not sure alphabetizing is that helpful.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think we see a mixture there of it did start out having price number one. I'm not too sure. Well, one of the issues is how many filters or attributes there should be.
Right.
With
Of
attributes,
course.
yeah, you know, you can have some that are a little bit more back end administrative,
Yeah.
SKU number or something like that, or where it's coming from. So not all of your attributes need to
So
be
that
exposed to the end user.
you would hide some is what you're
Yeah.
saying. Well, not necessarily hide, but you would put them in a place that they would be displayed to the people who need to see
Yeah.
them versus the others. So, for example, our sponsor of the show, Zoom and Software, makes a delivery platform where they can help companies bring all their content together and decide to not show some kinds of content. And so
Mm-hmm.
maybe tagging it as internal, for example, if I were an external user, my profile said, hey, Scott's an external customer, I wouldn't see the internal facets, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we made the rules and we had software that could follow those rules, and that maybe that's a smart way to do it, right? You know that those things are all important, but they're not all important to
Yeah.
every user.
Yeah. Exactly. So that, yeah, that's one of the issues. And then, again, how many, how to organize them. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, actually, I did talk about some of these in my blog post, and I'll
Yeah.
include that link in the resources.
Can attributes contain details about things that we consider outside of taxonomy?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what do you mean when you say yes about that?
Okay. Yeah, because I don't even consider price taxonomy. I mean, you could have set price ranges, so there's a little bit of curation there. Uh, and actually, I think maybe now I'll turn to some slides that I
Oh,
have too,
perfect.
which if we're talking about the comparison,
Yeah, let's do that, and then
yeah.
we'll tackle all these questions. You've got tons.
Okay. All right. So let's see. And yeah, actually, I'm going back to this one because I showed it before. So, right, preparation time 2 hours, 15 minutes. I mean, these are not controlled by a taxonomy. Calories may be by range, and it depends on how your tool manages it. I will say that in Pool Party, the stuff in the green is not managed in a controlled vocabulary. Other tools, it might be that you can have a controlled vocabulary manage some of the attributes. But to talk again about the difference between, let me share, actually, give a full slideshow view here. I worked on this diagram of how facets and attributes relate to taxonomy differently. Now that I showed some websites, maybe this makes sense. So on the left, facets like the plus and I think LinkedIn didn't have any with a hierarchy, but you have various facets, and then you have some different categories within them. Maybe one of them will have subcategories and others might not. So the facets are from the start, although one could still begin with executing a search. Often people just put something in the search box and then they get too much, and then they're filtering by facets, but they're still, the categories are under them. Whereas in the attributes interact with the hierarchical taxonomy, and this was with the Etsy and eBay, we start out with categories and you go down, drill down and drill down. And then when you get, not even necessarily at the narrowest level, as you saw with Etsy, you could get attributes further up, but I just made it simpler here. You get the attributes associated, and they are associated with a specific category. So I hope that kind of gives an idea. So it is different in the design in the back end. I said the front end, the user puts something in a search box and then they get filters. And it might not actually seem that different. But the difference with the facets first is that you don't have to, you can get the facets appearing as filters even from the beginning without putting something in the search box. So there's a little different experience there. Okay, here's my side-by-side comparison. All right, I converted this from PowerPoint, so I don't have them coming in one by one. But the facets are a top structure of a taxonomy hierarchy, and it organizes it. And actually, if I go back to one of my other slides, I'll show that, where the Attributes are then supplemental to a hierarchical taxonomy, but they are usually a controlled vocabulary too. So facets contain controlled vocabulary terms, but attributes often do, but they don't have to. And you asked about that. So example, yes, no, I don't call that one. Having numbers or dates or descriptions. You can even have a description can be an attribute. Facets, what they're suitable for. Here I had to think about it. Certainly for documents, we saw for articles, maybe web pages, digital assets. And of course, attributes are suitable for products, but other kinds of specific things like courses. I was even thinking of contracts. And again, digital assets maybe can go either way. But then I was thinking facets are more content driven and attributes are more data driven. And don't try to ask me about all the details behind that, but it's my sense of that as being a data and knowledge engineer. I deal with data, I deal with knowledge content as well. Now, as far as implementation, facets, they're often a front-end implementation in many CMSs, like SharePoint. You have your refinement panel, so it's that's as facets. You don't have to set up attributes or anything. So with attributes, it's very common with products. So a PIM is a product information management system. They have definitely managed attributes, and then there are plugins with that with e-commerce software. So I know in that use case, you don't have to custom develop the support of attributes. In others, if you're not dealing with products, you might have to do some custom development to get those attributes to come up where you want. So then it comes to the user interface. They're both called filters, and what the user sees for facets will have filters for facets and more metadata. For example, we saw, there could be date showing up or something, and whereas attributes might not. They show up as filters too, but as I said, maybe not all the attributes. So it's the other way, because an attribute for something administrative or backend would not show up. And then finally, of course, how do we get to the content, the tagging or whatever? So with facets, as it's a part of taxonomy, these are terms, these are tagged to the content. Now, tagging or indexing can be manual or automated. And when it's automated, it's maybe based on natural language processing or machine learning, auto categorization. There may be some derived metadata too. But the way attributes are assigned to content is not like tagging or natural language processing. I mean, this comes from data. So I said it's more data driven. And so the records are assigned attributes based on metadata. And this could be from some upstream application. So it could be in a product information management system or something else. So where they get, populated is further up. So, okay, yeah. And a summary here that facets are sets of taxonomy terms that provide the user the option to select from multiple taxonomy terms of different types to kind of construct or limit or filter their search. You can even think of it as a Boolean and I want this and that, and this type of document on this type of topic. And whereas attributes are custom properties or characteristics pertaining to a specific term or category. And I said but they also allow the user to filter. And so the filter or refinement is both. I mean, it's a collections of taxonomy facets or attributes and maybe other non-taxonomy metadata. So the taxonomist has to work with others too to refine the results. So it will include, the filters should include all the taxonomy facets, but maybe not all of the attributes. And I just want to go back to this again, this one, because I didn't point this out before. On the left, this is, let's say, imagine for recipes, cooking methods, dishes, ingredients. Further down, there was occasion. Those are facets. Okay, what's in purple are facets. That's the concept scheme, the high level. Those are not for tagging. So what I'm showing here is a faceted taxonomy, actually. And then I went over on that other screen and said, well, you can have attributes too, but this was originally structured more as faceted. And I could make an ontology out of it too, if I wanted to say that, with that other side, what dish goes, is how is it cooked and everything. So I think that's enough of my slides. And
Excellent. Well, let's tackle some questions from the audience then. So I wanted to say I displayed just a few minutes ago the URL for the article that I referred to on the 4 Rs, which
okay.
is actually published on the Zoom In software website. So you can either Google the 4 Rs for personalization with the word Zoom In, ZOOMIN, and you'll find it, or you can look on your screen and that message might have disappeared by now. If it did, we'll put it into the email that you'll get as a follow-on, so everybody will be able to access that content. All right, so a few things first. What's the difference between alternative and hidden labels? You use both those words.
Okay. Yeah. Um, Sometimes I'll say, oh, they're all called alternative labels or synonyms, but the
Is
way
that like alternative facts?
yeah, in a sense, a hidden label is a subtype of alternative label, but the way SCOS, this a simple knowledge organization system, defines it, you can call it an alternative label or you can call it a hidden label, and then you can set some rules saying that the hidden label will not display to any users and only on the back end. And so then you can decide how you want to use it. And that's one of the things about SCOS. It just sets up kind of the parameters, the notation, and then you can kind of go with it as you like. And a hidden label might also be used for things like misspellings or older deprecated names. But I mean, more often, you're using alternative labels, and you might have some option to designate some of them as hidden labels that you might have considered as an alternative label.
How might we go about determining what kind of taxonomy that we need now that we know there's more than one type?
Okay. Well, you do consider the type of content, the nature of the content. So facets from the start work well if the content can all be described by the same facets. But if your content is just all kinds of more miscellaneous documents and articles and reports, it doesn't, other than document type and topic, or but it's not really that many. It doesn't, might not lend itself. That's why jobs or recipes or something that you might want to buy work better with facets. And then hierarchy is kind of for describing the subject area, having to do with like literature or research can get detailed, but also research. And then I'll mention thesaurus. I really think for research literature, often a thesaurus can also work well because we've got topics all over the place that they might not even fit into a neat hierarchy. That's very multidisciplinary.
How about this? It can be said that attributes might be similar to tags. Is that true in your book? And if so, tags over many different categories, right? This is why they don't necessarily belong to a taxonomy. Is that what you're trying to say? Because there could be more than one place that they're useful.
Oh, okay.
Do
Yeah.
they just have one home, I guess is the question.
No. I mean, I'm in, of course, the word attribute can mean different things, and I'm talking here as a supplemental controlled vocabulary, although some attributes are not even controlled, but let's say uh, to integrate with a hierarchical taxonomy, and as I've shown how it integrates. But sometimes, oh yeah, this actually brings up a point. Sometimes it's hard to decide whether something is just a narrower concept, or should it become an attribute. And you saw that with the guitars. We got this different kind of bass guitar, and then we had 2-string, 4-string. Well, should that be yet another subcategory, a type of guitar, or is that an attribute? Now, conceptually, you can go either way. I think it was decided, hey, this hierarchy's gone deep enough. Let's stop, and we're going to make this an attribute instead, and how it displays. And I know this came up years ago. I was doing some consulting on e-commerce and doing and working on precisely that. That's why the same person, the taxonomist, works on the hierarchical taxonomy and the attributes that are control vocabulary, because one just kind of merges into another. This was with appliances, and they had, kitchen appliances and stoves, and then there was electric stove or gas stove. Well, again, should electric stove and gas stove be yet another hierarchical level of a type of stove, or should we just say electric or gas is the attribute of the stove? So yeah.
So the answer is it depends.
Right, right. So kind of like
How,
you have to then think of the user experience. What makes sense then?
yeah. How do you make decisions on what attributes should be available as a filter and whether or not you should include them? So what do you think about when you're thinking, oh yeah, this sounds like it's a good thing. Should we use it or should we not use it? It seems to me that you would have first a gut feeling,
Yes,
right? Like,
yes.
oh, that of course, I'm looking at jewelry and I'm looking at necklaces, and I've had a necklace before and it has a thing in the back, but I guess it's called a clasp, right? And so you start to think, and then you think, should there be a rule when we get to the point where there's a thing that doesn't necessarily fit and there's disagreement? So what kind of criteria do you use to decide whether or not to include an attribute?
Oh, that's a good. Yeah, I haven't done a lot of actually, I haven't done a lot of work in attributes to know for sure. And uh, but I will just say one of the issues for taxonomy in general, and then any control vocabulary, is what have users been looking for? So search logs are very informative, and seeing what people have typed in, and then you can see are they looking for something specific like that. And the other way you sometimes, when you figure out, okay, taxonomies, are they for grouping or they're lumping or they're for splitting? So the attributes is the splitting part, okay, and then your facets are kind of more the lumping part.
Oh, I like that
I hadn't even
example.
thought of that.
I like that
Yeah,
explanation. I think that helps parse that.
right. Yeah. So how far do you split? Sometimes depends on volume, you see, uh, because we've got so many of this type, it would be useful to break it out, because the list of the users have to go through. I mean, you don't want them to have to scroll through pages of results. So that's
Sure.
usually where we break things down again, and that's where you could do it with attributes if it makes sense.
You just mentioned the word controlled vocabulary, and one of our viewers asked
Mhm.
if Heather could differentiate a controlled vocabulary from a thesauri.
Okay, for yeah. A thesaurus is a kind of controlled vocabulary. Controlled vocabulary just means that the terms are controlled. So it's not like a dictionary of words, or a word can have various meanings in a dictionary. In a controlled vocabulary, and it's a term, it's not one word, it's, a phrase, maybe a word or two or three, that represents a concept, and the concept has a single meaning and usage. So that's the basis. And then whether you're going to go further and have structure with it, and how are these concepts going to be arranged in a hierarchy? Are they going to be arranged broader, narrower, or related? That's where we get to a thesaurus, because a thesaurus is a kind of controlled vocabulary that has hierarchical, broader, narrower relationships between some of the concepts, and then associative or related concept, related term. And I guess I'll explain the difference between term and concept between some of them. And then some of them are, the synonyms or alternative labels. There's another feature in that's common with thesauri, is to even support having a note, a scope note. So it's not a definition, but just a little field, free text field to explain how a certain term may be used or should not be used, which is an optional field. So thesaurus is more specific. And what we see in many websites that show, in the hierarchies and browsing, they are not showing this related relationship as often.
Mm.
So it's a little bit more custom built.
What would happen? What would happen if you needed to? One of our viewers asks, add new products that maybe were introduced at the last minute, and they may not fit into the existing categories that you had prepared.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, nothing should be fixed. The taxonomy is never like fixed and done. It should always be updated and maintained. And even when I was working, that example with the stoves, that there was a taxonomy already on that website. They needed to add more things. I still remember there was a new product, which was the brand name SodaStream. It's to make carbonated water. I was like, where does this go? Yeah, so that is something you have to think about, because you don't create a category for one, the whole idea, right?
That's right.
Right. So yeah, that's interesting. And over at Amazon, they've got uh, dozens of people. I don't know how many, but they're taxonomists and browse developers. This job title I always see popping up, because they're developing the browse. See, they're separating the browse taxonomy people versus the attribute people, I guess. But because they constantly have to come up with new categories, so it's ongoing.
Yeah, I wonder if it's also because they are really in tune as a company with the delivery of text and audio content. And so
Mm.
they have to be able to prepare that content to be read aloud by their talking devices, which is a little different
Oh,
than shoving the same
yeah.
information from a product portal into one place and another
Okay.
place. You know what I mean? Like the tone would have to change,
Yeah.
maybe even the context and the reason for it being relevant, and the situation that the user finds themselves in when they're using the product could be communicated to Amazon, much like a browser, right?
Okay.
The people that are worried about people browsing in a web browser, they
Hmm.
can sense what web browser you're using. So just imagine, the Amazon company knowing that you're talking to their assistant Alexa through a particular device that's in your car, which
Right.
means that telling you things that you can't do in your car would be ridiculous because they know you're in your car.
Okay. Yeah. That brings us again to personalization. That it can tell where you are in a certain location, and then
I mean,
what
even
some things are
understanding the
relevant.
customer
Yeah.
journey is important, right? If
Yeah.
you understood
Yeah.
that the customer who's calling about their vacation
Uh-huh.
cancellation is probably going to be upset, you
Yeah.
want to deliver information that's in tune with their
Yeah.
potential negative, frustrated experience mindset at that moment, which brings up another question here. Um, let's see. Is the use of a visual mind mapping tool useful for starting the design of a taxonomy, or do you start in a different way?
It is for some people.
Yeah,
I have not, because I just haven't had the occasion to. Maybe not everybody's in the role to just start a whole taxonomy from scratch by
sure.
themselves. Usually there's some other start of a taxonomy here or there already. But yes,
Mhm.
definitely some people do use mind mapping tools to get started, and that's also a way to get started with an ontology.
Here's another question that I think dovetails right into your experience as a consultant. Can you add taxonomy to documents? If so, does it have to be a manual process, or are there automated methods that some organizations use?
Adding taxonomy, that's what I said. I did
Yeah,
refer to that. Tagging is what people usually call that. Yes, it can be manual or automated or a combination. Usually a combination is good. It depends on kind of the workflow, how many documents are
sure.
needing to be tagged. Within an organization, if you're, like, say, documents are managed in some document management or content management system, and the people who create them need to upload them and they need to tag them. Now, if they are not doing it really often, it makes sense for them to, yeah,
Sure.
they can tag manually what they have, and if there's a nice user interface, they can tag to it. It's more of these kind of other use cases that where there's a lot of flow of content dealing with data and news analysis. I mean, one of the most commons has to do with organizations now want to analyze lots of social media for sentiment analysis, all these emails and chats. That's a lot. So that's a big use case for automated tagging. What are these all about?
Does software like Pool Party, assuming that you have this, the answer to this, primarily manage the back end of taxonomy, or can you also use it to provide a front end search UI for customers that is based on the taxonomy?
It's primarily back end. I think I actually did show very briefly that front end with the help. I mean, maybe I should show that again just to remind people.
Yeah, go ahead, and then
Yeah,
we'll try to get two more questions in after that.
yeah. Okay. I'll just make sure I'm kind of logged in here first. We call it graph search, and it's going to be redone soon anyway. We use it a little bit more for demos, but some people can actually use it. So let's see, I'll share. Okay. Yeah, this is it. So what I'm showing is actually in our internal knowledge hub. So the product was just part of it. So if someone can start with a search, but then you can also select from these facets. We call them facets. Yeah. What kind of document does it come from? Pool party help. We have something called a knowledge graph cookbook, which you can also get for free if you want to learn about cookbooks or analyst reports or customer use cases, which I don't think I should show. There are other facets here. But if I wanted to, find out about, sometimes you can start with a search or you don't have to. But if, let's say, I want to start out with ontology, and then I want to limit, I can decide, well, how are ontologies used in healthcare? We may have some reports on that, and I can scroll down and involving a certain feature of the pool party product. Let's see here, the graph search, whatever. And, then we limit results, and each of them kind of appear up here, or, we can remove also and go back or something like that. So that is our only kind of front end, and it's done through an API. And it doesn't have to look like this. It doesn't have to be pink and this weird color, but I'm not too sure. This kind of green here. I mean, it's been implemented in other ways.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
One of our viewers wants to know, because there's a lot of questions that are not going to get answered because they
Right.
keep coming in, if you might be willing to answer in writing some of the questions. If
Sure.
let's say the Zoom in folks put together a list of questions that didn't get answered, would you be willing to write some short answers and we could post it as a blog post or something?
Okay. Sure.
Awesome. All right. Well, great. Well, thank you for joining us today, Heather. I thank you to the audience, by the way, for all the questions. You are amazing. There are tons of questions in here, and they're very deep. So some people are super into the taxonomy ontology topic
I know
already.
people are at different levels. So.
Yeah, and other people are just learning, and they appreciated it. You also got a lot of comments where people were actually just sharing that they appreciate that your experience and sharing with others and the examples. So thank you for doing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thanks again for having me.
All right. Well, I'm going to close out the show here after I thank Heather and the audience by saying, before you sign off, if you would use the rate this button to give us a 1 through 5 star rating, 5 being a high star rating, the best of the class, if you will. I'd appreciate it. Also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about our sponsor today, Zoom In Software. Zoom In is the producer of a powerful content delivery platform that allows you to bring together content of all types. That's structured content, unstructured content, audio, video, and other content types, and put it into one modern online knowledge center that hypothetically should improve the overall experience you provide to your prospects and your customers alike. If you'd like to learn more about Zoom In Software and how they may be able to help you, why don't you point your web browser to zoominsoftware.com, where you can learn more. You can also click the attachments button underneath your webinar viewing panel to click through to the Zoom In site or to access some of their content that they provided for us during the show. And I encourage you to do so. Also, I would like to let you know about our upcoming show, April the 26th. I am excited about this show. We are going to host Sakura Tyser, an experienced director of product content strategy. We're going to chat with her about what a director of product content strategy actually does. And Sakura will share lessons that she learned directing product documentation teams at several Silicon Valley firms. You can expect us to talk about recruiting and hiring new employees, building effective teams, how to overcome common challenges, select software, and even help employees carve out a path for career growth. We're going to take your questions as well, and I encourage you to be on the lookout for invitation to that show shortly. And then May 10th, we'll be interviewing Kim Jeske of Cloudflare. She's going to talk to us about why she believes we should be thinking about content as a product and not something that accompanies it. And what does it mean if we do that? You've been watching Understanding Attributes and Taxonomies with our special guest, Heather Hedden, who helped us demystify attributes, facets, and hierarchical taxonomies. Today's show has been brought to you by Zoom In Software. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, we hope to see you again. Stay safe, be well, keep doing great work. And don't forget that today's show is being recorded about 30 minutes from now. The URL you're using to watch today's live show will magically display a recording of today's show that you can share with others, and we hope that you will. Thanks for joining us today on the show, The Content Advantage. I'm Scott Abel, your host, and we'll see you again soon.
Ensure your customers find the answers they need with Zoomin. Bring together product content from all teams and sources to deliver a unified, personalized content experience. Check us out at www.zoominsoftware.com.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Heather. Have a great day.
Okay, bye. Thanks.